You know what time it is. You know what time it is.
How firm my friendship. Oh,
you know what time it is. You roll with them boys of the fall. You know what time it is. On the ground with a nose for the ball. You know what time it is. Blood, sweat, and them tears for this game. Leaving it all out on the field with no fear for you lames. And it's Buckeyes by a billion. We in the building with over 100,000. We represent from the uttermost to the public housing. And if we don't play, all wide receivers got your secondary shook, so they cook them like Bobby Flay. Hey, stay out of my way and trust me, cause I know it's a way. Somebody please give this brother an eye. Come on.
What up, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to the Buckeye Boys, where we talk about college football with real fans. I'm Devin. Big, intense day for the Buckeyes. Signing day, Brian Hartline leaving. But the truth of the matter is we have something way more important coming up than Brian Hartline leaving, than whatever recruits signed today, who didn't sign today. We got the Big Ten title game coming up. I believe the first time in college football history that we have a 1 versus 2 undefeated teams in the Big Ten championship game. Obviously, Ohio State, Indiana, two of the most dominant teams in the nation. Gonna dive into that, man. Are they really? Is Indiana really on Ohio State's level? That can be argued for a long time. A lot of Indiana fans think this is going to be a blowout in one way. They're obviously new to this. They're not true to this. So that's just what they say because that's all they got. Because last year it didn't quite end how they wanted it to end. I got a special guest joining us. He's about to stop being called a guest, but he is a guest because he works for PFF. But got a big-time guest coming on tonight. But before I bring him up, before we dive into this, you guys know what to do. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. The super chats are open. We're going to be diving into each position group. Which team has the advantage in each position group? We're going to dive into the stats. Kind of a deep dive on both these teams. And I couldn't think of a better person to bring in than Dalton Wasserman with the PFF. What's up, Dalton? How are you?
Oh, fantastic, man. Can't wait for conference title week, man. It's so many of these games with such high stakes, right? There's trophies on the line. We get a 1-2 matchup. We could get madness in the ACC. The American title game is for a playoff spot. So I'm really excited for this entire weekend. It's going to be a ton of fun.
It is. And something I didn't even mention, we played the Buckeyes in Indiana are playing for a trophy by Big Ten title. Not so much going to be affected in the playoffs. I doubt either team's dropping out of the top 4, going to get a bye. If they do, something wild is going on. But this might be the game for the Heisman Trophy, which is kind of a big deal. And we'll dive into that a little bit tonight. But as we have said, as I stated in the introduction, the number 1, the number 2 team in the nation and newly found, we just figured out last year that Indiana had a football program. Well, they're reminding us again this year. They still have a football program. One of the best football teams in the nation, Coach Sig. It's kind of almost unbelievable what he's done there. So huge credit to him. Mendoza, big-time quarterback, playing very well. But, man, I want to start off with this. I want to start off with asking you, last year, similar situation with these two teams. They played in the regular season, though. Indiana coming into the shoe, and before the game, everybody was talking about how close of a matchup it's going to be, how good Indiana is, and we saw the result of that, 34-17. It wasn't really close. Indiana made some mistakes that kind of put them down a lot quicker than we would have suggested, but, man, what were your thoughts before that game? Because I got to know that for you to answer this next question. And do you see something similar happening this year, or do you have similar feelings that you had last year?
My thoughts before that game last year, and I was at that game in Columbus, was that Indiana was really, really good. A lot of people talked about the soft schedule they had last year, and watching that team and how dominant they were on both sides of the ball, I thought they were really good, and I thought they could compete. Now, I thought Ohio State, with just the top-end talent that they had, was a little bit better. Obviously, they proved that with a pretty convincing win, but I still think, look, Indiana right now is well-deserving of that number 2 spot. They're undefeated. I think they're even better than they were last year, and they can absolutely compete. To me, it starts with their defense. They've got a high-level Big Ten elite defense that can keep them in any game, and it's just a matter of if their offense can play up to, and with a team like Ohio State with the defense that they have with NFL players littered all over it.
Yeah, it is. These two teams, very comparable statistically. When you look at the NCAA website and you look at where these teams are statistically, just like, for instance, total defense, we're number 1, they're number 4, okay? Total offense, we're number 2, they're number 5, right? The only real disparaging ones there are the red zone defense. We're number 1, they're number 61. That's the biggest one there when you look at these defenses. But more importantly, when you look at the overall teams, obviously both teams undefeated. But what I want to dive into tonight is each position group. I've seen a couple people do this. I saw the Big Ten Network do it and was not a fan of what they chose. But I wanted to bring you on because I have scarlet glasses on from time to time, and I want to make sure, man, is my take real, or am I just too much of a homer to realize, what's really going on in this matchup? But let's start off with probably the biggest one, the most talked about one, because it's a Heisman, and that's Fernando Mendoza against Julian Sand. Fernando Mendoza is throwing for 2,758 yards this year, 32 touchdowns at a 72% completion percentage, 5 interceptions. He's been sacked 15 times, but he's also rushed for 243 yards. Julian Sand broke the record for the most accurate quarterback in all of college football, broke Bo Nix's record. He's thrown for 3,065 yards, 79% completion percentage, has also only thrown 5 interceptions. He's only been sacked 6 times. But this is the question I think a lot of people around the nation are trying to figure out. I know the Heisman voters are trying to figure out, who do we give this thing to, right? But again, Fernando Mendoza, a lot more experience, been around the game a lot longer. Julian Sand, redshirt freshman, right? Not that much experience. Some people would say he hasn't been tested, never been down in the second half. I've saw people give Mendoza the edge in this race because of that experience. But it's just like, man, we're going to take something away from Julian Sand because he's been so good that he's never been down in the second half. But before I get too far into it, man, give us your breakdown. These two quarterbacks, arguably the 2 best quarterbacks in the nation. Who's got the advantage in this game, man?
Look, it is obviously very close, and Mendoza's had a great year. I'll start with him. When you look at for Fernando Mendoza, I think the big thing, he's got a quick release, he's a quick decision maker, and he's really tough, man. I think that the one thing that stands out about him more than anything else is toughness and his willingness to take hits in the pocket and stare down the barrel and make throws down the field, right? I think he's a guy who's not necessarily a dynamic athlete, but he does add a little bit there as a scrambler. He can make plays when the coverage dictates that he needs to take off, right? So he's tough, he's gritty, he's accurate, he's got a quick release. But Julian Sand on the other side, man, like you said, most accurate quarterback in the country, completion percentage, adjusted completion percentage when you take out things like drops and throwaways. Even our quarterback charting, we chart accurate throws and ball placement, things like that. He's got the highest accurate throw rate in the country, and he's had it basically all season. It is Joe Burrow, Bo Nix level accuracy, for as long as we've been doing college quarterback charting. Those guys, CJ Stroud's up there too, those guys are the standards for accuracy, and Sand's hitting it as a redshirt freshman. And I was curious to see him last week against Michigan, against Wink Martindale and the NFL schemes, and how he would respond to his own adversity, an interception on the 3rd play of the game, right? And see where that would go, what that would look like. And he came back with no pulse and just shredded Michigan the rest of the way. So personally, our grades bear this out. And from what I've seen this year, Mendoza's been outstanding for sure. But I would lean towards Sand, the younger kid, having the advantage here. I just don't think he has shown you really any flaws at all through 12 games this season. He's just been outstanding. And like you mentioned, the single most accurate quarterback in the country, especially when you have that group of receivers. I'm in on it. Sand's taken full advantage of those weapons, but he's been outstanding himself.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, we know the national perspective on this. A lot of people picking Fernando Mendoza as the Heisman favorite. But when you break this thing down and you look at that moment in Fernando's career that was defined as his Heisman moment was the Penn State game. And I know Julian Sand has had, I think, one kind of rough game when he had was throwing the brand new receivers and Carnell Tate out for 3 games. J.J. Smith out for 1 game. So he's went through that in his career as well. But Fernando Mendoza in the Penn State game was 19 for 30. Threw an interception in that game. In the Oregon game, threw an interception as well. In the Iowa game, threw an interception as well. Only 5 interceptions on the year. But when you look at when he goes up against these tougher opponents, it looks like he kind of gets brought back down to earth a little bit, right? Julian Sayin got shoved into the best rivalry in all of sports, the Michigan game, and shined. Like you said, threw an interception, did those things. I got to give the edge to Julian Sayin here. And again, throughout the night, I'm doing my best to make sure I do not have my scarlet glasses on, just talking as a football fan. But I really do, man. I watched the Indiana-Oregon game today. I watched the Indiana-Penn State game today. And Fernando Mendoza, tough as they come, he does have that rushing ability, kind of a surprise athletic where he's not afraid to go get those yards. I do like that about his game. But Julian Sayin's processing speed, what he's done, 79% accuracy on the season. And I think a lot is taken away from him because he's been so good. He hasn't had those moments that Fernando has had where he's had to strap the team on his back and go win the game, right? But I would argue that shows how much better of a quarterback that he is, that he's never had to do that because that's not how the game needs to be played. It's a team game. It needs to be a quarterback, distribute the ball where it needs to go to the playmakers. Never really was in need to have that. So I'm giving the edge to Julian Sayin here, Ohio State check mark. It sounds like you are as well. All right. Yeah. That's 2 check marks. All right. We'll end the show there. Ohio State's going to win the game. That's it. It's over with for them.
It's all about quarterbacks. That's all it's ever about is quarterbacks. That's all people want to know, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the next one, man, wide receivers. Again, these 2 teams, I know Surratt, Surratt and Cooper are the 2 that I'm well aware of on their team. Cooper, 804 yards, averaging 13.9 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. Surratt, 650 yards, 13.5 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns as well. On the other side of the ball, JJ, 942 yards, and Carnell Tate, 793 yards with missing 3 games and JJ missing 1 game. I'm well aware of Ohio State's level of talent from the wide receiver position, but I'm really intrigued to hear your thoughts on Amari Cooper and Surratt from the wide receiver position. I mean, just to jump ahead a little bit, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are first-round draft picks. You're hard-pressed to put them up against any other duo in the nation and give that other duo the benefit of the doubt here. You're hard-pressed in this one here, but give me your thoughts, man. Wide receiver position, who you giving this one to?
I think if you're making an argument for Indiana, yes, Cooper and Surratt are outstanding players, right? You mentioned Tate and Smith as first-round kind of guys. I think Surratt and Cooper are both going to end up being probably day 2 guys. I think Elijah Surratt's probably a solid second-round potential top 50 guy. Big body, excellent body control, really good route runner, outstanding hands. You talk about contested catches and being able to make tough catches. There are very few better than Elijah Surratt in the country. And Amari Cooper is their speed guy, right? He's a guy who can take off on you, especially if you let him loose down the middle of the field and you give him a seam, he's going to be gone, right? He can make those big plays. And then maybe Indiana, you could consider just at wide receiver here, maybe a tiny bit deeper. EJ Williams is a good player. Charlie Becker's a guy who's really come along. He was the star of the Penn State game when Surratt was out, making some sick contested catches. All of a sudden, they have this sophomore player with a big body who can make contested catches. So I think if you're looking for an argument for Indiana, it's depth, maybe a tiny bit deeper. I like Brandon Inniss, but he's been a little inconsistent, right? I think for Ohio State, though, it's just there's good receivers and even really good receivers like Cooper and Surratt, right? But when you have Smith and Tate, you mentioned it, they're legitimate potential star NFL receivers. Jeremiah Smith might be a top 10 wide receiver on the planet right now, regardless of level of play. I have to lean just slightly towards Ohio State because you have guys on Indiana's team who are very good, but you have at least one, if not two guys on Ohio State's side that are special, that the coverage doesn't matter. They are just absolute, especially Jeremiah, just freaks of nature, right? And I think that's just the slight difference when you talk about, all right, man-to-man against maybe, the best corners in the country, the guys Ohio State has, and D'Angelo Pons, and we're going to get into the secondary for Indiana. They're really good. But man-to-man, who are you picking out of a lineup? It's Smith and Tate. It's the best pair of wide receivers in the country, and the rest can just work around that.
Yeah, you look at how, J.J. Smith alone, how he affects games, right? Even in games where he doesn't have many receptions, it's because he's being doubled. Like, when teams are preparing to play Ohio State, the number one thing on their list is J.J. Smith. That's it, every single time. You get up against Indiana, like you said, very good wide receivers, but I'm not quite so sure they have the same type of game plan around any of those receivers. Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. But J.J. Smith is a for sure person that you have to plan your defense around. There's no way around that. If you don't, he's just going to win the game on his own. So, yeah, it goes to Ohio State there. And obviously, Julian Sand throwing the ball, two good quarterbacks obviously affect wide receivers as well. Next position group, just because we got to go down it, not too familiar. I should have just thrown tight ends into the wide receiver group as well, but we're not going to. I know all about Ohio State's wide receiver group. We run 14 personnel a lot. We got Max Clare, the transfer from Purdue. I'm not a fan of 14 personnel at the goal line. Let me just say that real fast. But Max Clare, 420 yards on the year, averaging 10.2, 2 touchdowns, had some catches in the Michigan game, and before that was kind of the star of the show with his first over 100-yard receiving. I did pull up the stats for the Indiana tight end. I'm guessing it's Riley Nowowski. He's got 296.
Yep.
Nowakowski. There you go. I should have just turned this right over to you because I bet you know a little bit more. That's what I'm going to do now. Give us your thoughts, man, the tight end position, brother.
So Indiana actually, as an offense, is not a team that uses their tight ends, especially in the passing game, very often. Nowakowski's had a couple of good games. He had a big game against Wisconsin, but it's not really an offense that features tight ends as receivers very much. Their top two tight ends, Nowakowski and Holden Stays, only combined for 30 catches this season. So it's just not something that's featured so much. And then, to me, I've been really impressed with Ohio State. Their two tight ends between Max Clare and Will Kaczmarek over there. I think not only as receivers, and Max Clare, of all the tight ends we're talking about in this game, I think he's clearly the best player, right? He's a dynamic athlete. He had the huge game a couple weeks ago with Smith and Tate out, like you mentioned. And honestly, Ohio State's been this good. They've been the best team in the country without even, I don't think, using the full talents in the receiving game of Max Clare. Look, he was one of the best tight ends in the country at Purdue last year. I was expecting an even bigger impact of him, and maybe we're going to get that now going into this game and further into the playoff. And if they get that going, I don't know. I already didn't know how you stopped this team before. I don't know how you would stop this team now. So had a couple of drops early in the year, but I'll be honest, you know what I've been really impressed with, especially lately? The ability of Clare and Kaczmarek, especially when Ohio State, they get in 12 personnel, one back and two tight ends, and it's those two guys, they're flying all over the place, man. They're pulling around behind the line of scrimmage. They're getting on the second level. They can get into open space. I've been so impressed by the blocking, the run blocking of these two guys that for as much as, the offensive line, I think as a unit is better than it was last year, but these two tight ends are making a big-time impact as run blockers. I think it's made a huge difference. We've talked about the resurgence of the Ohio State running game the last 5 weeks. The tight ends are a huge part of that.
Yeah, that Michigan game, Will Kaczmarek absolutely went off, manhandling everybody he touched. Absolutely manhandled him. He's a transfer from Ohio University coming in, played a lot last year, but this year he stepped his game up, man. So I love it. We're going to give that position group to Ohio State as well. Next one, the running backs, man. Running backs, obviously Ohio State been through some ups and downs in that position. Brought in C.J. Donaldson from West Virginia, got a true freshman in Bo Jackson, a true freshman in Isaiah West, and then a sophomore in James Peoples, who we figured would be the bell cow at the beginning of the year. Bo Jackson, 952 yards, 6.3 yards per carry. He's only got 5 touchdowns. C.J. Donaldson is used in the red zone. He's got 10 touchdowns on the season, but we know who C.J. is. Buckeye fans do. On the other side of the ball, man, watching Indiana, I've been very impressed with their running backs, man. Hemby, 866 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and Black, 729 yards, 5.7 yards per carry. Just super impressive, man, that both these backs can play football at the level at which they do. I'll give my pick away here. This is the first pick I'm giving to the bad guys. I'm just giving it to Indiana just because of the depth there. Not that no, that's just what it is. I'm going to leave it there. You go ahead, Dalton. What's your read on this situation?
Yeah, I agree. 6 weeks ago, if you asked me this, I think it would clearly be Indiana with the concerns I had a little bit about this running back room for Ohio State. Bo Jackson definitely makes that closer, and there's a good argument that, especially as a true freshman, that he's the best football player out of all those guys that you just mentioned. But I think sometimes you're right. The depth guys for Ohio State are a bit inconsistent, right? They haven't gotten what they thought they were getting out of James Peoples. CJ Donaldson has really been, sometimes I watch him in those short yardage situations and it feels a bit frustrating, doesn't it? Like, he's a big physical back, but I feel like he should be, I just get especially down in the red zone. That's the one thing for me with Ohio State this year is there's sometimes down the red zone offense, especially like the 1 yard line thing against Michigan last week. I'm like, man, just get in there, just punch it in. It's the one thing, the red zone inside the 10, especially all year, is like the one bit of Ohio State's offense that's frustrated me all year, right? But I think when you look at Indiana, and you have Roman Hemby, who transferred in from Maryland. Very good back. He had a very good year last year at Maryland. Solid player, really good speed if he gets in the open field. And Kalen Black is a guy who came over with Kurt Cignetti from James Madison. Solid football player. Similar size guys. Both of them explosive. I think they both have the same number of explosive runs on the year for Indiana. And I think the big thing with those two guys is you can put either one of them on the field, and you almost wouldn't notice the difference, right? And they're two starting caliber backs. So I'm with you. I have a slight lean towards Indiana. Ohio State has actually closed this gap with Bo Jackson in recent weeks, but the fact that you have two guys in there that are really good for the Hoosiers, that are both of equal talent, and you don't really notice any drop off at all, I'm with you. I'll give a slight edge to Indiana.
Yeah, like I said, it's – for me to give them the edge is hard for me to do. But like I said, I've watched Indiana a couple times this year and spent today watching them. Just was super impressed with them. But Bo Jackson is a freshman, right, doing what he's doing. So, I mean, the dude could absolutely light it up as well. We got a couple other freshmen and Isaiah West that has, I believe, a very high ceiling as well. So let's get to the trenches, man. Some would argue the most important part of the game. I'm one of those people that would argue that dynamic right there. Offensive line. Ohio State come out the year, huge expectations, brand new left tackle, brand new right tackle, but bringing back 4 starters from last year. A lot of the national media don't really realize that. They think that it's a complete overturn, but you remember all the injuries that happened last year. 4 of the guys that played the entire playoff run are starting on this offensive line. There's only one new one. That's Phillip Daniels, our right tackle, transfer from Minnesota. Have had their ups and downs, man. I mean, there was a point in time, like 3 or 4 games ago, where all of Ohio State media was putting out reasons why essentially the offensive line sucks. But I wasn't one of those people. I had my concerns with our right guard position, but it was more the game plan. You got to remember, we went on a 3-game pretty much practice run where we weren't running everything. Carnell Tate wasn't playing. J.J. Smith wasn't playing. Put a lot more pressure on our offensive line. But more importantly, this Michigan game, best game this offensive line has played all season. So talent-wise, very good. On the other side of the ball, they've been running the ball very well for the most part. But I did notice a pattern there. When you pull up the rushing stats for Penn State, for Oregon, for Iowa, they're rushing for barely over 100 yards, but still able to rush the ball and outrush their teammates. We'll get to the defensive side of the ball in a minute. I believe Carter Smith, maybe their left tackle, one of their tackles. He's a very good, I believe he's from Ohio as well. Very good, one of the best tackles in the nation. What's your rundown on the offensive side of the ball, this offensive line, man? Where are you leaning for this one?
This is a very tight battle. You just mentioned Carter Smith, the star of the show. I'm pulling up the numbers now, but I think he might be the highest graded pass protector in the country this year. I'm waiting for this to load up here. Even battle, a very, very even battle. Second behind Trey Zune, actually, at Texas A&M. Second in pass blocking grade for Carter Smith there. So they've got an absolute stud at left tackle. I mean, what you have here for both teams is a case where they've been mostly really good, and then in a couple of the biggest games, not spectacular. You look at the 3 lowest graded games for Indiana in pass protection: Oregon, Iowa, Penn State. Okay, I mean, those are 3 really good defensive lines and 3 really good defenses that you're talking about. You look at it for Ohio State now. You look at it and you go, okay, what are the lowest pass blocking games? Texas, Penn State, elite defensive line. So it's going to be a question moving forward of, look, we know that both these offensive lines are really good. They're 2 of the best in the country, but can they block the elite teams? Now, the one thing I will say that you make a very good case on is that I think Ohio State's offensive line has gotten better as the season has gone on. And that was really impressive what they did against Michigan, because Michigan at times could throw some weird blitz looks at you. They didn't blitz as much as I thought they would. I'm going to check the percentages on this right now. 44% is still that's a pretty high rate. That's about where Wink Martindale usually blitzes. And they were just fine, didn't have an issue. And when they were sending the 4-man rush, those are good players. And look, they're not Mason Graham and Josiah Stewart and those guys, but Rayshon Benny, TJ Guy, Derek Moore, these are great players. And they really shut it down. Julian Sam was only under pressure 4 times last week. I still have just a tiny bit of a question as to whether Indiana can pass protect against the elite teams. And this team specifically, remember last year, I know now it's Matt Patricia instead of Jim Knowles. But when Jim Knowles found that the blitz button was working, I remember sitting in the press box at that game. And when Jim Knowles on the 2nd or 3rd drive of the game started blitzing, he did not let off the gas because Indiana had no answers. So the pass protection part of this, to me, against a team like this, not only against Caden Curry and those guys up front, but what if Matt Patricia starts blitzing the same ways that Jim Knowles did last year? I have a little bit of a question about that. This is an extremely close battle. My numbers and grading would actually tell me that there's a slight edge to Indiana, but they also didn't play Texas and Colin Simmons and those guys out of conference. So to me, the numbers are probably about even when I factor that in. I'm going to lean towards Ohio State just because I feel like in the big moments, like a game like last week, I still know that they can show up, and I think they're getting their groove going right now, and in the run game as well. Indiana, I still have just a little bit of a question in these huge matchups if they can pass protect at that level, and to the point where, again, Sayan was only pressured 4 times last week. I'm not sure entirely that Indiana can pass protect at that level against a defense, like, especially now if you've got Arvell Reese coming off the edge a decent amount too.
Yeah, I love that you brought up last year, because for me, right, when I give my score prediction, when I think about this game, this is the matchup I think about. I think about our defensive line against their offensive line, and our front 7 against their offensive line, and I think that is a huge advantage in Ohio State's way for that matchup in particular. But I fall back on sacks allowed. We're number 2 in the nation. We average giving up about half a sack a game. They're number 19. They give about a sack and a quarter a game. Not a huge difference there. Fernando Mendoza's been sacked 15 times. And we're talking about a pretty mobile quarterback, has been sacked 15 times. Julian Sayan has only been sacked 6 times. And he's not quite as mobile as Julian Sayan. So that's where I fall back on and give this one to Ohio State as well. You got those PFF grades. It's interesting to know that the Indiana offensive line is grading out a little bit more. But, hey, we're going to find out tomorrow, man. So offensively, the only one leaning in Indiana's direction so far are the running backs. But we know, obviously, we can do this all day long. Big-time game tomorrow. Offensively, it looks like the advantage is going towards the Buckeyes as of now. So switching over defensively, defensive side of the ball, man. Matt Patricia coming in this year. We lose pretty much all our starters on defense, minus we got 2 starters back, replacing the rest. A lot of people, including myself, did not expect Ohio State's defense to be at this level. But watching that Oregon game, man, this Indiana defense mauled Oregon's front. They have a pretty good offensive line. They are a rushing team. And, man, they essentially got shut down by this Indiana defense. So, starting up front, the defensive line, man, you got some sacks here for Indiana. They got Tucker, a defensive lineman for them, has 5.5 sacks. Daly, 4.5 sacks. And then I believe Landon's the other one with 4 sacks. So they have several defensive linemen with, 4 or 5 sacks. Ohio State, Caden Curry, 9 sacks. And Kenyatta Jackson, 5.5. So it seems like they got a bunch of rotation on the Indiana side. Ohio State has some rotation, but give us your thoughts. Defensive line, man, who's got the advantage here?
I think this is actually it's a great battle. I think it's the most underrated part of Indiana's team. And honestly, their best player on that defensive line, a guy who doesn't have we have him down with 1 sack this year, but he's their leader in pressures. Michael Kamara is an outstanding player, and I think teams have just tilted their pass protection more towards stopping him, big number 6 off the edge there, but an awesome football player. They lost some guys too from last year's team. CJ West, the big guy in the middle, is the big one, but you've got guys like Tyree Tucker on the inside stepping up. Mario Landino's got 6 sacks this year. He's a really good football player. Stephen Daly, you're right. They have 7 guys who've played at least 200 snaps this year up front, and they're all rock-solid football players. And I'll say this for Indiana, maybe they don't have the most dynamic pass rush you've ever seen, especially with teams tilting things towards Kamara this year, but every one of them is terrific in run defense. They are out. This will actually, I think, be a bigger test. We talked about the challenge of Ohio State getting the balance and the run game going. We talked about that against Michigan last week. I think you have an even tougher test against Indiana because, to me, even more than the offense, the quarterbacks, the receivers, I think over the last 2 years with Cignetti, I think the best part of Indiana's team, front line and linebackers, is the run defense. That's what's been the difference, is being able to get physical at an A-plus level. So I think this Indiana defensive line deserves a lot of credit. And then, like you mentioned, Caden Curry has been just outstanding this year, run and pass. Kenyatta Jackson on the other side. Caden McDonald, man, he's been a revelation. And look, Tyleik Williams was a great player, but it feels like just the same thing. Just boom, here's another first-round run stopper right here with Caden McDonald on the inside. The man is a brick wall. So, I think there's a case to be made again that Indiana maybe is a tiny bit deeper. I'm going to say that the difference in this for me, though, is the pass rush from especially Curry and Jackson off the edge. I think especially Caden Curry has been a little more consistent. I remember going back to, I think it was the Washington game, that he just absolutely dominated. And I'm watching that tape, and I forgot just for a second, because I got so used to watching Jack Sawyer every week. I was like, damn, Jack Sawyer's having a good game, man. And then I was like, wait, Jack Sawyer's on the Steelers, man. That's right. Oh, yeah, that's Caden Curry. And I was like, man, like this guy, he's just got the high motor like Sawyer did. He's good in run defense. So I think in run defense, I really think they're about even. I'm going to give the slight edge to Curry and Jackson here with the pass rush. I mean, when I tell you a very slight edge, because that's a great group that Indiana's got, slight edge to Ohio State, but it's very close.
Yeah, this is another one of the closer battles, just like you said. But if you wouldn't have been on this show, I'd be saying something similar. Very close here. I really like Indiana's depth. But like you said, Caden Curry this year, nice surprise. Another one, I mean, K-Mac got the Best D-Line award in the Big Ten. First team is K-Mac and Caden Curry. So got some honorable mention, Kenyatta Jackson and Tywan Malone and Edric Houston. So we got some serious talent on this defensive line. Tywan Malone is another one who stepped up in a big way, playing beside the best nose tackle in the country in Caden McDonald, the best defensive tackle in the country in Caden McDonald, another first-round draft pick. I like the Indiana depth just a little bit more, but I think that overall ceiling on the on Ohio State side on the defensive line, I think it's just too much. And like I talked about when we were talking about the offensive line, I think this is the matchup here that is going to be the detriment of Indiana in this game. But we're going to find out tomorrow. Defensive line goes to Ohio State. And I'm going to tell you something, dude. I'm curious to see where we go with the rest of this, because statistically, total defense, we're number 1. They're number 4. There is actually quite a big difference in yards per game there. There's about 49 yards per game from the number 1 and number 4 defense in the nation. That just speaks to the elite level of this Ohio State defense. Rush defense, we give up 81 yards per game. They give up 79. So it's like when you look at the statistics and you look at the number, we're dealing with 2 really good defenses here. But when you move to the linebacker position, I mean, you got arguably the number 1 draft pick this year in Arvell Reese. I know that's argued. I've heard he's on several people's lists here, but the dude is a freak. And then you also have Sonny Styles, who come down from safety and is also a freak of nature in here. Peyton Pierce, the backup. You look at their side. They got some pretty darn good linebackers, man. Hardy's got 7 sacks on the season, and Jones has 5.5. So they love rushing the linebackers. Really tough linebackers on the Indiana squad. Give us your take, linebacker position. how could Indiana win this one?
This is this is maybe the best battle that we have out of all of these. Ohio State, look, there's a reason Arvell Reese is getting top 5, maybe number 1 consideration in the draft. He's a freak of nature, and whether he's at linebacker or off the edge, he's a freak of nature. And Sonny Styles, man, I feel like sometimes he gets forgotten about. I thought he played just an outstanding game last week. I thought you could have argued he was the best player on the field. I actually need to check right here how highly he was graded in that game, because man, I thought he was just everywhere. 73.4 is still pretty darn solid, and there's a lot of guys in that range. But of course, Caleb Downs, the highest graded guy. We'll get to him. But I mean, they're just. It's not just that they're good linebackers. And again, this feels like, to me, it might come down to this factor, kind of like it did with the receivers. Indiana's got an awesome group. Elijah Hardy is awesome. Aiden Fisher is a James Madison holdover that came over with Cignetti. He's the leader of that defense. He's outstanding. Isaiah Jones, man, is a guy who's really emerged this year as a terrific football player. And by the numbers, this will be a fun one. So by our grading, I was looking at this before the show. Indiana's group grades just a little bit higher in run defense. But Ohio State's pair, they grade a little bit higher in coverage. They're a little bit better in space, a little more athletic when it comes to moving laterally and backwards. Indiana might have the best group of just straight downhill, getting your gap linebackers in the country with those 3 guys, especially when all 3 of them are out there in a base defense like that. So it really depends on your preference. I'm going to kind of do the same thing for the receiver. I think Indiana's got outstanding, maybe even the second best group in the country when you look at it. Georgia's up there as well. They got an outstanding with CJ, all those guys. But for these, did I lose you there for a second? You good?
Just a little bit. You're good now, though.
These two. Sorry, I was just saying these 2 guys. Internet's always is what it is. These 2 for Ohio State, much like Smith and Tate on the offense, they're freaks. I mean, Styles and Reese are just freaks. Like, if you told me those guys for Indiana were taken somewhere between, round 2 and round 5, fine. But you could get both of these Ohio State linebackers in the first round, and athletically, it's just nuts, and they stand a better chance in coverage. It's one thing I'm curious to see is how much, and I know Ohio State loves throwing to the outside. Of course, I would too. How often can they attack those linebackers and all that zone coverage that Indiana runs? That's going to be a fun factor. And how much is Indiana going to blitz those guys, like you mentioned, getting all the pressure that they do? I'm going to give a slight, and I mean very slight, lean towards Ohio State, but that Indiana group of linebackers is a bunch of game wreckers there too. They're awesome.
I know. It's weird because when you talk about like linebackers doing their job, we're talking about potentially 2 of the best linebacker groups in the nation, but you got to dig so deep into this position battle right here and stack each one up individually. It's like, well, Arvell Reese is just so much of a physical freak, and same with Sonny Styles, that you just got to give it their way. And that's not taking anything away from Indiana's linebackers. I mean, obviously, on the field production, they're right up there with them. But like you said, man, I mean, it's got to go to OSU here. I don't see a better linebacker room in the country than Ohio State right now. When you have 2 6'4", 240-pound linebackers that are bench pressing 410 pounds, running 4.5 40s, and you got James Laurinaitis as the coach, who is big-time NFL linebacker, all-time leading tackler for still an NFL team. It's just like, that combination equals success. So going to the Buckeyes here, man, the linebacker, like I said, this defense here, I'm real curious. So let's just dive into it, man. Let's talk about, I'm going to split these up. Let's talk about the corners, man. And I'm going to let you start with this one first. I always give a little spiel about it first, but dive into the corners on both sides of the ball for us here.
Yeah, so, I mean, you start on the outside. Let's start with Indiana. The star of the show, he had a just incredible true freshman year at James Madison, followed Kurt Cignetti over, and he's Jeremiah Smith's high school teammate, number 5, I believe he's number 5 still, D'Angelo Ponce. He's undersized. You would never pick him out of a lineup first if you were just playing backyard football. I think he's 5'8", maybe 175 pounds. This guy is as technically sound as any corner in the country. He's one of my favorite players in the entire country. D'Angelo Pons, a 90 PFF grade for us this year at elite stuff, one of the best corners in the country. You've got Jamari Sharp on the other side, who's been really good as well. Generally, you want to attack this defense away from Pons, and Sharp makes that very difficult. And then their most common nickel guy, he's listed in our thing as a safety, but he's really their nickel. Devin Boykin's an awesome football player too. How about a 93.9 run defense grade? When you have that nickel and sometimes you want to get out of those 3 linebacker sets, even though they got great linebackers, you want a guy who's one of the best run defenders in the country. Devin Boykin is that guy, along with an 80 coverage grade as well. These 3 guys are outstanding. And the big thing, I think, and we'll talk about the schematic differences here in a bit when it comes to the matchup between the defenses and these 2 offenses, is that Indiana, they're the masters of technique and fundamentals in zone coverage. Like D'Angelo Pons, I would very much argue he is the best zone coverage corner in the country. And it's a style that I think is preferable to play against Ohio State, because there's nobody man-to-man other than maybe Leonard Moore for Notre Dame is the only guy I would stack up with these 2 receivers. But even then, you got 2 of them. So nobody's got two corners that can put up with this. But Pons, Sharp, Boykin, the first 2 on the outside, Boykin in the slot, terrific football players, super disciplined, good tacklers, physical, tough guys. They're awesome, and it's a great matchup. Once again, like it was last year. Because remember, this group, they held Jeremiah Smith to 3 catches and 34 yards last year. And that was a lot because Pons, when they could shadow him, and zone coverage is different, but when they could shadow Pons against his high school teammate Smith, Pons was winning that battle. That's how good he is. He's maybe the only guy I saw all year that was really winning that battle. Jahdae Barron a little bit too for Texas, but really Pons is outstanding, and it's really at the head of a really good group there.
Yeah, you got Davis Enigmanosin on the other side, who last year, the most penalized defensive player in the country, but it's come out this year, been a lockdown corner on first team, all Big Ten, really having a good year. Jermaine Matthews, freshman All-American when he first started here, has played his way up into – we are the number 1 pass defense in the country. Statistically, they are the number 14. We give up 121 yards of passing per game. They give up 173 yards. But I got to lean with you on this one because this one's super close for me. I don't trust myself. I don't know enough about their corners to go one way or the other here. So what's your final answer going to be? Which way are you going to lean here?
What's funny is I think for the sake of production, and I will tell you, I would argue D'Angelo Pons might be my favorite college football player in the country right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Indiana, but I will tell you that I do think Ohio State's corners, when you talk about Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews, like you mentioned, and then you get Lorenzo Styles there in the slot. The fun matchup for me is Ohio State, because Indiana they don't play any man-to-man coverage. It's not their thing. They play more zone coverage than like any team in the country. Ohio State will go to some man-to-man. In Indiana's offense, Mendoza and the receivers, and even going back to last year's game, you remember this. This is a big reason they lost to Ohio State and Notre Dame last year, is because those guys, we love Surratt, we love Cooper. Cooper's got good speed. They don't have elite speed, and I still am not sure that they can beat big-time man-to-man coverage. If Ohio State and Matt Patricia just chose to go, hey, screw it, single high, Caleb floating around somewhere, press man on the outside, beat us over the top. Go ahead. I'm not sure that their receivers are going to be able to do that against Ohio State's corners, which is what makes this matchup so fun and such a hard choice for me. Based on production and based on what I know about this Indiana cornerback room and this team, I'm going to go with Indiana. I'm going to lean that way. But I do think Ohio State presents a matchup problem for Indiana's offense.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy. I'm not sure you could pick another team in the country to stack up to Ohio State as good, right? When we're going down through all these position groups, trying to determine who gets the lead here. I mean, in a lot of these, we're having this same conversation. It's like, dang, man, if you look at this area, yeah, you can pick them. But if you look at this area, you can pick them. But ultimately, man, when it comes down to it, I mean, even in your reasoning there, you're mentioning, it's just like, man, at this point in time, we just got to back up to like, what are your physical gifts that you have? And the athletes that Ohio State has most of the time are just at such a higher caliber athletically, physically, but not like doing your job as a football player. But that's the category we got to go to. And it sounds like we're in a similar one there with, Iggy and Jermaine against Pons. He's a little bit shorter, but one of the best corners in the nation. So it's fair to give that one to Indiana there. Going to the safety position, Caleb Downs just won every defensive back award that you can win. To my knowledge, I think there's a few more floating around out there, but Caleb Downs is Caleb Downs, playing beside a sophomore safety and Jalen McLean. Caleb Downs got 2 interceptions on the year. One of their safeties, I believe, Farrell, is that his name? Has got 4 interceptions on the year and 6 pass breakups. So they're pretty good at the safety position too. Break this one down for me.
Good players, smart players on the other side. They're veteran players. Amari Farrell was a starter for them last year and came back this year. Lewis Moore is a funny story because he spent his first 2 years at Indiana. Then he transferred to Ole Miss and played there. Had an okay year, but was kind of a rotational guy. And then Kurt Signetti let him back in the door this year to be a starter. So they got good, solid, smart veteran players. Farrell is really physical. And a big thing you want to look for schematically, I talked about a lot of the zone coverages. Indiana runs more zone coverage than just about anybody in the country. They also do a great job of disguising their coverages. So these 2 safeties, what's going to happen in this game is Julian Sand is going to have to find those 2 and see where they're going all the time, right? Wink Martindale in Michigan last week, it felt like the looks after a while got kind of stagnant, and they made it easy for Sand to see. This Indiana defense is not easy to read because they got a lot of simulated pressures where they can drop off D linemen into coverage and send one of the linebackers. And these safeties rotate these zone coverages. They're very smart. They know where to be. They're disciplined. They're tough football players. On the other side, I really like what I've seen from Jalen McLean this year. Really first year as a full-time starter back there at safety. I think he's done a great job with everything Matt Patricia's throwing at him. And Caleb Downs, I mean, this is the difference for me. And if we're going with just the safeties in this, I just have to go with Ohio State. And I think Caleb Downs is just, he's special, right? And this is what it feels like the theme has been for several of these positions. We're like, man, in total, they're pretty even, but Ohio State has like that one guy or that maybe 2 guys that nobody else has. Nobody else in the country has a Caleb Downs. I still think there's an argument. I know David Bailey's been great. Ruben Bain's been great. Reese on his own team. Colin Simmons, I love at Texas. But I still think there's an argument, easy argument, that Caleb Downs' best defensive player in the country. And you got Matt Patricia's DC running an NFL defense with all sorts of rotations and different coverages and man and zone and everything they throw at you. And the key to it all is Caleb Downs. And ever since he was a true freshman at Ohio State, first of all, Nick Saban never starts true freshmen in the defensive backfield. He doesn't do it.
Yep.
And then I watch him even his true freshman year at Alabama. When I had heard he was going to Ohio State, I was like, all right, let me watch him one more time. And I'm like, the first thing that stands out above everything else is the football IQ and his ability to handle the entire playbook and be the captain of it all. And then he's a freak athlete who can pick it off and return punts for touchdowns as he did in this game last year. And he's one of the best tacklers in the country. And it's everything. You can put him anywhere you want. He's the ultimate. He's a little bit smaller, but he's a chess piece. He's a chess piece in the same way, even though he's a little bit smaller, as Kyle Hamilton and Derwin James and guys like that are. And Brian Branch, right? A lot of people might comp him to Brian Branch. Elite safeties at the NFL level. I think that's what Caleb Downs is going to be. He makes a difference for me. Ohio State safeties win this battle.
Well, some would argue he's not a safety. He's actually a defensive end. He played defensive end last week in the game and actually blew up the running back and almost got Bryce Underwood to the ground. So the dude plays linebacker all over the place. That's the thing about Caleb Downs is like sometimes statistically doesn't show out. But in order to understand how good of a football player Caleb Downs is, you got to really understand football, defensive schemes, and what he allows other defenders on his team to be able to do because of his ability to process, move around in so many different positions. I mean, that's the unfortunate and fortunate part about it is, I mean, even me sometimes, like your normal fan watching the game, it's like, oh, Caleb Downs only had 2 tackles, none this, none that. Really, where is he at? Man, you gotta understand the game and understand how he's affecting what his other teammates can do and the whole defensive scheme in general. So you break this thing down, man, on the offensive side of the ball. You still with? Okay, you still are. You froze a little bit. We got Indiana. You gave the running back, I did too, to Indiana. A little bit of depth there that they got us on. Defensive side of the ball, gave them the edge in the corner position. Obviously, we can go down through, grade each individual position groups. It looks like the advantage is going way Ohio State's way. But if you're a college football fan, you know sometimes you take that stuff up, you crumble it up, and you throw it out the window. But me, man, I'm leaning more towards the same feelings that I had last year into this game. You brought it up. Ohio State just has those players that nobody else has. Nobody else has a Caden McDonald. Nobody else has an Arvell Reese, a Caleb Downs, a Jeremiah Smith, and Julian Sayin and a Carnell Tate. Look, those players just kind of separate themselves. And when you look at Indiana, you can argue one of the best coached team in the nation, playing some of the best football that you can watch. But when you stack them up against Ohio State, for me, it's that individual talent differentiation that's just going to set it apart. We watched it last year. Their offensive line just couldn't quite hold up against the continuous pressure and the talent that Ohio State had on the defensive line last year. And you can argue this year's defensive line is better than last year's defensive line. So for me, man, obviously this is football. Obviously, a lot of things go into this. We know Ohio State has a distraction going on with Brian Hartline, but Coach Ryan Day has been the king, 16-0 since his last loss, has been the king at bringing his team together, preparing them for the games. Coach Sig has too. Google him, right? Just Google him. You'll know what he does, man. But I can't help but be a fan of what Coach Sig has done at Indiana. But you said you wanted to talk about schemes a little bit. This is that opportunity. Final breakdown, man. Final thoughts on the game, offensively, defensively, how you seeing this thing play out. And if you want to give a score prediction, throw that in. If you want to save it for your show, completely understand.
Oh, listen, Dev, our preview's already up. We did our preview yesterday. It is up for everybody here to watch if you want that full breakdown.
Okay.
But I'll give you a little summary of it here. If I was making – so for Ohio State, I believe – what we've seen from the run game these last 5 weeks, if Ohio State has this much offensive balance, especially like we saw last week against Michigan, I don't think they're going to lose. I don't think they're going to lose to anybody. Ohio State with a run game is not fair. That's first and foremost on offense. And Indiana's run defense, can they stop Ohio State? Yes. And I think, and I told you this last week with Michigan, they don't have to run for 300 yards. But if Ohio State gets to 160 plus like they have the last few weeks, I don't know how you're beating them, right? Defensively for Ohio State, I think the key for me, I'm curious to see where Matt Patricia goes with, number one, blitzing and seeing how this Indiana offensive line can pick it up, because that was a big problem when it was Jim Knowles last year. And once Jim Knowles started blitzing, he stayed on the gas the rest of the way after that first. Because you remember the first drive of the game when Indiana came down and scored. He didn't really come after Curtis Rourke, and they ran the ball well, and they kind of stayed in their base defense. And then once it got a little further into the second quarter, he started getting on the gas, and the Indiana had no one. So the blitzing is one, and to go along with the blitzing, and this is where I think the battle gets really interesting. Fernando Mendoza, for us, like passing grades and things like that, a lot lower against teams that run a lot of man coverage, a lot lower against man coverage this year. And I think that goes with, I love Indiana's receivers. They got a good group. They don't have blazing speed. And I think if you're going to threaten this Ohio State defense, you have to have one or two. I'm not talking, this guy runs a high 4.5. He's got good. I'm talking blazers. They don't have a single blazer. Surratt is maybe the best possession receiver in the country up there, one of the best ones. Cooper's got good speed, but he's not that physical at the line of scrimmage. I want to see if Ohio State and Matt Patricia, they run man coverage about an average rate. I think it's like 25%. If he's going to ramp that up a little bit more and say, hey, Davison, Jermaine, even Lorenzo in the slot, hey, let's go, man. Hey, you got to take a penalty or two? Fine. You've been doing it all year, last year anyway. It don't matter to me, right? I want to see that. On the other side, if I was making a checklist for Indiana to win this game, number one, Mendoza's got to play the game of his life, especially if you're going to get man-to-man coverage like that. He's got to play the game of his absolute life. Number two, you have to find a way to rattle Sayin. We have yet to see, even with the early interception last week, we've yet to see a single time that he was rattled. Not once this year has he been rattled. Can you do that? Can you do it with rotations and coverage, with the, the pass rush, with the four-man rush? Was it simulated pressures? What is it going to be? How are you going to rattle Julian Sayin? Because if you don't, and he's as comfortable as he's been all year, and he was as comfortable as he was last week, it's over. It's done. Number three, Indiana's going to have to prove they can just, in general, win this game in the trenches on both sides of the ball, or at least make it a little more even than it was last year. I think they have a better chance to do that on the defensive side. It's their offensive line that worries me a little bit still. You mentioned it against Iowa, against Oregon, last year against Ohio State, last year against Notre Dame. D-line held up reasonably well in those big games. Offensive line and the two quarterbacks are the key for me. And then I worry about the lack of speed at receiver. I'm with you. I love Indiana. I think there's a chance that Indiana really is, at the end of the day, the second best team in the country. Like, we could get a rematch at the very end, right? But Ohio State has a few guys, a half dozen guys maybe, who are such special talents that you just can't deny it. I still think they're the best team until further notice. And I think they're going to do it, not blowout, but I think reasonably convincingly. You can check out even more of a breakdown on our show and get Max Chadwick's opinion on this too. It's up on our YouTube channel, PFF College Football Show. I have it 27-14 Ohio State.
27-14 Buckeyes. I like it, man.
I think Mendoza is the X factor. I just have a gut feeling. I could be wrong, and then he's going to go number 1 overall in the draft if I am wrong. I have a feeling Mendoza's going to struggle here.
Yeah, I mean, Matty P, what he does with these defenses, when you look at his NFL record, what he did against rookie quarterbacks in the NFL is also kind of an insight into, okay, how does he mess with quarterbacks? Fernando Mendoza, you brought it up several times. I think that's what this comes down to. The couple weak spots in Ohio State's defense that we've seen this year is when the quarterback has time to read the middle of that field, there's been some holes there, and Indiana will take advantage of that. They've taken advantage of it on several other defenses this year. But I think it comes down to this, and I preluded to this a little bit on this show. It's our front seven against their offensive line. I do think that pressure is going to get to them. I think rushing 4 is going to at times cause Fernando Mendoza to get out of that pocket. We watched it in the Oregon game. We watched it in the Penn State game. When he does that, he will get a little hairy sometimes with the football. He's thrown an interception in every one of his big-time games that he played. He's only thrown 5 on the year, but 3 of them have come in those games where they were a little bit closer that you would talk about. So, man, this defense, I asked myself, is Indiana, are they going to score more than 17 points against this Ohio State defense? When I asked myself that question, the answer is no. I don't think they're capable of doing that. So then I go to the other side. Is Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Julian Sayin, Bo Jackson, this offensive line, are they going to score more than 17 points against this Indiana defense? When you got Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and the most accurate quarterback in the nation, my answer to that question is yes. So I think, again, we keep repeating ourselves here and saying the same things, but, man, Ohio State's the talent differentiation here. When you put it all together for Indiana, really good football team, not arguing that. But, man, you talked about this in the Michigan game and when we started talking about it, and I actually argued with you a little bit on this. You brought about the rushing attack for Ohio State, and if this Ohio State team finds balance, how can they be stopped? Well, they found it in that Michigan game. They found that balance and proved they're essentially unstoppable when that happens. So coming off that momentum, I know a slight distraction and whatnot, but I ultimately think Ohio State better show up ready to play. There's no doubt about it, but I love that you brought up Fernando Mendoza against this defense. I know Fernando Mendoza in an interview said when he thinks about him going against Caleb Downs, he thinks about Tom Brady and Ed Reed, and it's just like, all right, I hope maybe you'll turn into Tom Brady, but we'll wait and see, man. But I like the matchup. Their offense against our defense is, I think, what really separates this game. They got a good defense. There's a chance they can slow our offense down a little bit with what they're able to do. They've been able to get pressure a lot this year, and you talked about Pons and their secondary and what they're able to do and the fact that they like playing zone. That's about what you need to do when you're going up against Ohio State and these receivers. They're really good at playing zone, so I can see them slowing us down a little bit. But when it's that battle, I like our defense against their offense. I lean in a little bit more towards the Buckeyes here. I got 34-17 in the Buckeyes' favor. That's awful generous. I understand that. But that is honestly what I believe is going to happen here. Coach Day's got this team operating at a very high level. You want to play your best football at the end of the year. Indiana, seems like, man, they've been all out in a lot of their games. They got the number 1 scoring offense, I think, maybe not, but a lot higher than Ohio State's. Indiana is a little bit higher when it comes to those games. So we'll see. Ryan Day slowed it down, more of an NFL model, saving, want to play your best football in these playoffs. That plan seems to have worked. We're coming in pretty healthy as one team could be in here. Are you aware of any injuries on the Indiana side that we need to be aware of?
No, I
I'm
don't
not.
believe so. There was a few weeks ago, like Surratt missed the Penn State game, but I haven't heard of any aggravation since that. So as far as I'm aware, both teams are really completely healthy. And I'll tell you another thing too. I just want to throw out there. You mentioned that with the run game, we're going to look back at this, and maybe we could do it now. That stretch where Carnell Tate missed a couple games and Jeremiah Smith was out and all that. That stretch there where they figured out how to run their offense without those guys is going to end up being the blessing in disguise, because they're taking the way that they ran it without them and they're adding it in to running it with them, especially with that run game. And to me, again, I mentioned the one weakness with Indiana's linebacker. Boy, I'm telling you, don't forget about Max Clare. I would get him involved going down the seams of this defense too. I really would.
Yeah, I know. It's just wild. You keep talking about it. It's like, all right, if you find a way to shut down JJ and Carnell, they got Max Clare, Bo Jackson as well, 166 yards of total offense. They just seem to be coming on at the right time. But you got to show up. You got to do it. Everything looks this way on paper. Looks like Ohio State has the advantage. They're going to have to do it this Saturday, Big Ten title game. I heard, forget which station said it, first time ever, 2 undefeated, 1-2, Big Ten title game. I haven't fact checked that. This is a big time game, guys. I'm excited about it. Dalton, I appreciate you for joining, man. You got any final words for College Football Nation?
Man, I would just say anybody out there who hasn't liked and subscribed already to the PFF College Football Show, Max Chadwick and I have our breakdown of this game and all 9 conference title games. If you're interested in any other ones and what that playoff picture might look like, check that out. And we're going to be covering from here in, however far Ohio State goes. We're covering every playoff game. You guys just tune in. We did it last year. You guys were a great fan base for us through that playoff run. Let's do it again. Let's have another fun playoff run.
Yeah, we've had the discussion about PFF on here several times. I've become a huge fan. I'm subscribed to their website. I follow all their stats, all their gradings. It matches what I see on the field. So people can argue the other way. I promised you guys a show where we break down PFF a little bit more. That's going to happen. It's going to be in the offseason after the playoffs. Too many things going on right now. Everybody's too busy, but we'll get that on here. If you're one of those fans that doesn't really understand PFF, I used to be right there with you. I've had a bit better understanding of it now, and it just matches up what you see on the field. PFF should be more popular than what it is. It's growing in popularity, and I love it. I love what they do over there. Your breakdowns, they're fire. If you're an Ohio State fan, you need to go over there. You need to watch what they got to say about Julian Sain and several of these other players, because they're on point with what they're saying. Dalton, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I love building this relationship with you. We'll have you on again for sure. Excited to watch this Big Ten title game. But on that note, chat, we appreciate you guys, and we love you guys. Dalton, I'll let you go. I just almost ended the show prematurely. I got a few things to cover. But, Dalton, I appreciate you, brother. We'll get you on next time.
Appreciate you, as always, Dev. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Dalton, man, he's awesome, dude. Always willing to come on the show. I couldn't express my appreciation to him. Obviously, you can tell, huge college football fan, very knowledgeable about what he says, man. When I had him on here for that Michigan game, like, there were things he was saying I didn't agree, and kind of fought back a little bit. And you watch the game, and it's like what he was talking about is playing out in real life in front of my eyes. And he was like, dude, I think this Ohio State rushing attack is going to end up, being the determining factor in this Michigan game. And lo and behold, the second half, that's what happened. We watched it. It happened. So tune in here. He picked Indiana. He only got them on 2 position groups, the running back position because of the depth, and the cornerback position because of D'Angelo Pons and how good he is. But ultimately, he ended up choosing the Buckeyes here. I think it was 27-14. So we'll see how close this is. Big time matching coming up, guys. I know there's signing day drama. I know Brian Hartline left, all that. The Block O will continue to go on. It doesn't matter where Chris Henry Jr. signs. Ryan Day is here. We will be okay. Do your best. Focus on this big-time matchup we got coming on Saturday. The recruiting side will work itself out. We are the national champs. We're going into the playoffs as the number 1 seed when we take care of the Indiana Who are they in this Big Ten title game? We're going to get a bye. It's playoff season. I will be at every single playoff game, and I will be streaming live before the games. If you're not subscribed to the Buckeye Boys and to Scoop, do it now. If you want live coverage of these playoff games, I always go live going into the games through the ticket line, and I keep it live as long as possible. I go right down to the field. I'm one of those guys. If I can sneak on the field, I will do it. I purposely have an Ohio State collared shirt this year. Probably going to print out a name tag with a lanyard that says Devin, Ohio State. I'm just going to try to stroll right in, get you guys some real good coverage. So like, subscribe the show on your way out. Appreciate you guys. Go Buckeyes. Love you guys. OH.